Captain Jake Morrison leaned forward in his chair as the scanner beeped 3 times in rapid succession. He had been staring at star charts for the past 6 hours, and his eyes burned with fatigue. The exploration vessel Aurora had been traveling through empty space for 2 weeks without finding anything interesting. Most days out here were like this, quiet and routine, exactly what he had signed up for when he joined the Deep Space Exploration Program. "Captain, I'm picking up something unusual," said Lieutenant Claire Bennett from the navigation station. She brushed her blonde hair away from her face and frowned at her screen. "There's a signal about 4 million kilometers ahead. It looks like a distress beacon." Jake sat up straighter and felt his pulse quicken. In 3 years of commanding the Aurora, they had only encountered 2 other ships this far from colonized space. "Can you identify the source?" "Working on it now," Claire replied. Her fingers moved quickly across the console. "The signal pattern doesn't match anything in our database. It's definitely not human." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of the ship's engines. Jake's crew of 12 people had been together for 18 months, mapping systems that no human had ever seen before. They were good at their jobs and trusted each other completely. But finding an alien vessel was something entirely different from charting planets and asteroids. "Should we investigate, sir?" asked Ensign Kevin Harris from the communications station. He was young, barely 23, and still got excited about everything they encountered. Jake considered the question carefully. They were 2 months away from the nearest human outpost. If something went wrong, help would not arrive in time. But the distress signal meant someone needed help, and he had not become a spaceship captain to ignore people in trouble. "Change course to intercept," Jake ordered. "But keep our shields up and weapons ready. Claire, try to get more information about that ship before we get too close." The Aurora changed direction smoothly. Jake watched the main view screen as the stars shifted position. His ship was not large or powerful compared to military vessels, but it was fast and equipped with good sensors. It had carried them safely through many dangerous situations. 20 minutes later, the alien ship appeared on their sensors. Claire pulled up an image on the main screen, and several crew members gasped. The vessel was beautiful in a strange way. Its hull seemed to be made of crystal or glass that glowed with soft blue and purple light from within. The design was organic, with curves and flowing lines instead of the sharp angles of human ships. "It's about half our size," Claire reported. "I'm detecting severe damage to the main structure. There's a hull breach on the port side, and the power systems are failing." "Any life signs?" Jake asked. Dr. Henry Cole, the ship's medical officer, checked his instruments. He was an older man with gray hair and steady hands. "I'm reading biological activity, but I can't tell you much about it. The life forms don't match any species in our medical database. I count maybe 15 individuals, but most of the readings are very weak." Jake stood up and walked closer to the view screen. The alien ship was drifting without power, tumbling slowly through space. Debris floated around it, pieces of the crystalline hull that had broken off during whatever disaster had struck. "There's something else, Captain," Claire said quietly. "We're near a collapsing star. The gravitational readings are increasing. That ship is being pulled toward it, and in about 2 hours it's going to be torn apart." Jake made his decision. "Prepare a boarding team. I want rescue equipment, medical supplies, and environmental suits. We're going over there to see if we can save anyone." "Sir, we don't know anything about these aliens," protested Lieutenant Frank Peters, the security chief. "They could be dangerous. This could be a trap." "Look at that ship, Frank," Jake said, pointing at the screen. "Does that look like a trap to you?" "Those people are dying. We have to try." The crew moved quickly to prepare. Jake suited up along with Claire, Dr. Cole, and 3 security officers. They loaded emergency medical equipment into a small shuttle and launched from the Aurora's docking bay. The alien ship grew larger as they approached, and Jake could see the damage more clearly now. Something had torn through the hull with tremendous force, leaving jagged edges that sparkled in the light from distant stars. They found an airlock that was still partially functional and managed to force it open. The interior of the ship was dark except for the glow from the crystalline walls. Emergency lighting flickered weakly in some sections. The air was thin and cold, but their suits protected them. "Stay close and watch your step," Jake ordered. "This whole structure could collapse at any moment." They moved through corridors that were clearly designed for beings much different from humans. The ceilings were high, and some of the doorways were oddly shaped. They found bodies quickly, aliens with insect-like features, their shells cracked and broken. Dr. Cole scanned each one, but they were all dead. "Captain, over here!" called Claire. She had found a doorway that was larger than the others, sealed with some kind of energy field that was still active. Jake examined the control panel beside the door. The symbols meant nothing to him, but he tried pressing different combinations until the field flickered and disappeared. The door slid open, revealing what looked like a command center. And there, in the middle of the room, was someone who was clearly important. She was taller than any human, perhaps 7 feet, with a body covered in plates of armor that gleamed purple and gold even in the dim light. She had 4 arms, all hanging limply at her sides, and delicate wings folded against her back. A large piece of metal debris had pierced through her chest, and glowing blue fluid leaked from the wound. Jake rushed forward and knelt beside her. "Doctor, get over here now!" Dr. Cole pulled out his scanner and ran it over the alien. "She's alive, but barely. I've never seen biology like this. I don't know if I can help her." "We have to try," Jake said. He looked at the alien's face and saw her eyes flutter open. They were compound eyes like an insect, reflecting his image hundreds of times in tiny facets. Despite their alien nature, he could see intelligence and pain in those eyes. "Please," Jake said, not knowing if she could understand, "let us help you." The alien's hand moved weakly and grasped his wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. She made a sound, musical and strange, and then her eyes closed again. "We need to get her back to the ship right now," Dr. Cole said urgently. "I can put her in medical stasis, but we're running out of time." Jake and the security officers carefully lifted the alien. She was heavier than she looked, her body dense and solid. They carried her back through the damaged corridors as the ship groaned and shuddered around them. Behind them, sections of the crystalline hull began to crack and fall apart as the star's gravity pulled harder. They made it back to the shuttle with minutes to spare. As they pulled away from the dying ship, Jake watched through the viewport as the beautiful crystalline vessel broke into pieces and was drawn into the collapsing star. Explosions blossomed silently in the vacuum as the power core ruptured. Back on the Aurora, they rushed the alien to the medical bay. Dr. Cole and his assistant worked frantically, using the ship's computer to analyze her biology and create compatible treatments. Jake stayed in the medical bay, watching through the observation window as they fought to save her life. For 3 days, the outcome remained uncertain. Jake found himself spending most of his time near the medical bay, unable to focus on anything else. He could not explain why saving this one alien felt so important, but it did. Maybe it was because he had looked into her eyes and seen a person, not just an unknown creature. Maybe it was because she had reached for him in her moment of greatest need. On the 3rd day, Dr. Cole called him into the medical bay with good news. "She's going to survive. Her body has accepted the treatments and she's healing rapidly, much faster than a human would." Jake felt relief wash over him. "When will she wake up?" "Soon, I think. Her brain activity is increasing. You should probably be here when she does. You're the first person she saw, after all." An hour later, the alien's eyes opened. She looked around the medical bay with those strange, compound eyes, taking in her surroundings. Then her gaze found Jake, and she stared at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was like music, but Jake could not understand the words. Dr. Cole activated a translation program, and a mechanical voice spoke in English. "You pulled me from death. You saved my life when you had no reason to do so. I am Zirath, sovereign queen of the Velkari Dominion. By the old laws of my people, you have bound yourself to me through your actions. I owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid." Jake stepped closer to her bed. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison. You don't owe me anything. We help people who need it. That's what we do." Zirath tried to sit up, but Dr. Cole gently pushed her back down. "You are modest, Captain Jake Morrison, but among my people, a life debt is sacred. You risked yourself and your crew to save me. This creates a bond between us that transcends simple gratitude." "What kind of bond?" Jake asked, curious despite himself. Zirath's eyes seemed to shimmer with an emotion he could not read. "That remains to be seen, but our paths are now connected. The universe brought us together for a reason." Zirath recovered faster than Dr. Cole had predicted. Within a week, she was walking through the Aurora's corridors, her tall frame moving with grace despite the lower ceilings designed for humans. She had to duck through most doorways, and her 4 arms made navigating the narrow spaces challenging, but she never complained. Her wings, which had been damaged in the attack, were healing slowly and remained folded against her back. Jake found himself drawn to her presence. He would make excuses to check on her recovery, to ask if she needed anything, to simply talk with her in the observation deck where the ceilings were higher. The rest of the crew was fascinated by their alien guest, but they kept a respectful distance. Only Jake seemed comfortable in her presence, and only Zirath seemed to seek out his company. "Tell me about your people," Jake said one evening as they stood together watching the stars drift past. "What is the Velkari Dominion?" Zirath's antennae moved slightly, which Jake had learned meant she was pleased. "We are an old civilization, Captain. My people have traveled the stars for thousands of your years. The Dominion spans 40 star systems, with hundreds of worlds under our protection. We value honor above all things, and we live by codes that have guided us since ancient times." "And you're their queen?" Jake asked. "That seems like a lot of responsibility." "I was born to it," Zirath replied. "My mother ruled before me, and her mother before her. The royal bloodline has maintained peace and order for generations. Or it did, until recently." Her voice became sad. "There are those who believe our ways are outdated. They want change, and they are willing to kill to achieve it." Jake remembered the destroyed ship, the bodies they had found. "Is that what happened to you? Someone tried to assassinate you?" "Yes. A rival faction ambushed my convoy as we traveled between systems. My guards fought bravely, but we were outnumbered. They destroyed my escort ships and damaged my vessel beyond repair. I thought I would die alone in the darkness of space." She turned to look at him, her compound eyes reflecting the starlight. "Then you found me." "I'm glad we did," Jake said softly. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Jake was aware of how close she was standing, how the light from the windows made her armor shimmer. He had never been attracted to anyone who was not human before, but there was something about Zirath that drew him in. Her intelligence, her strength, the way she carried herself with quiet dignity despite losing everything. "The old laws that I mentioned," Zirath said suddenly. "You asked what kind of bond they create. Among my people, when someone saves another's life without expectation of reward, it creates what we call a heart bond. It means our destinies are linked." "What does that mean practically?" Jake asked. "It means many things. In the traditional sense, you would be considered my consort, my partner, the one who stands beside me." Zirath's voice was careful, as if she was choosing her words precisely. "But I understand that your people have different customs. I do not expect you to honor our traditions." Jake's heart was beating faster. "And if I wanted to? Honor your traditions, I mean?" Zirath turned to face him fully. "Then I would be honored beyond measure. But you must understand what you would be accepting. My life is complicated and dangerous. Those who tried to kill me will try again. Anyone close to me becomes a target." "I've faced danger before," Jake said. "It comes with the job." "This is different," Zirath insisted. "And there is more you must know. My people live much longer than yours. I am 60 years old by your calendar, but I am still considered young among the Velkari. I will live for centuries more. You would grow old while I remained unchanged." Jake had not considered that. The thought of aging while she stayed young was sobering. But when he looked at her, when he felt the connection between them, those concerns seemed distant and unimportant. "We're approaching Velkari space," Claire's voice came through the communication system. We should arrive at the border in 2 days. Jake had altered the Aurora's course to bring Zira-Ath home. It had added 3 weeks to their mission, but he could not abandon her in the middle of nowhere. His crew had understood and supported the decision. Over the next 2 days, Jake and Zira-Ath spent almost every free moment together. She taught him about Velkari culture, their complex social structures, their art and music. He told her about Earth, about human history, about his own life growing up on a farm in Colorado before joining the space program. They discovered they had more in common than either had expected. Both loved exploration and discovery. Both had lost people they cared about. Both carried the weight of responsibility for others. The conversations flowed easily, and the silences between them were comfortable. On their last night before reaching Velkari space, Zira-Ath came to Jake's quarters. It was late, and most of the crew was asleep. She stood in his doorway, her tall frame filling the space, and Jake could see uncertainty in her posture. "May I come in?" she asked. "Of course," Jake said, standing up from his desk. Zira-Ath entered and the door closed behind her. She looked around his small quarters, taking in the personal items he kept, the photos of his family, the books he had brought from Earth. "Tomorrow I will return to my people," she said quietly. "I will reclaim my throne and face those who tried to destroy me. It will be dangerous and difficult, but tonight, I do not want to think about tomorrow. Tonight, I want to be here with you." Jake moved closer to her. "I want that too." "We are very different," Zirath said, reaching out with one hand to touch his face. Her fingers were cool and smooth. "But I have felt connected to you since the moment I opened my eyes and saw you. Is this madness?" "If it is, then we're both mad," Jake replied. He reached up and touched her hand. "I've never felt this way about anyone before, human or otherwise." Zirath leaned down, bringing her face close to his. "Among my people, we show affection by touching the neural ridges along the spine. It is intimate and pleasurable. May I show you?" Jake nodded, his breath catching in his throat. Zirath moved behind him and gently touched the back of his neck with her fingers. She traced slow patterns down his spine, and Jake felt warmth spread through his body. It was not quite like anything he had experienced before, something between a massage and a caress that made every nerve come alive. He turned to face her and reached up to touch her armor plating. "Can you feel through this?" "Yes," she said. "The armor is part of me, not separate. It is sensitive to touch." Jake ran his hands along the smooth purple and gold surface, and he felt Zira-Ath shiver under his touch. She made a soft sound, musical and pleased. Her wings unfolded slightly, catching the light from his desk lamp. They spent the night learning each other, discovering how two very different bodies could find harmony together. There was gentleness and passion, curiosity and care. Despite their biological differences, they found ways to express what they felt, to create intimacy that transcended species. In the quiet hours before dawn, they lay together in Jake's small bed, her larger frame curled around his. Zira-Ath's wings draped over them like a blanket, translucent and warm. "Come with me," Zira-Ath whispered. "Return to my homeworld. Be my consort in truth. I can give you a life of wonder, show you things no human has ever seen. We can be together." Jake felt his heart tear in 2 directions. He wanted to say yes more than anything, but he thought of his crew, of the mission they still had to complete, of the responsibility he carried. "I can't leave them," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not now. We have 8 more months of survey work. I made a commitment." "I understand duty," Zira-Ath said. "It is something I respect. But what happens after? Will you find me again?" "Yes," Jake promised. "As soon as the mission is complete, I'll come to you. I swear it." Zirath pressed her forehead against his, a gesture she had told him meant deep respect and affection among her people. "Then I will wait for you, Jake Morrison. The bond between us is real. Distance and time cannot break it." The next morning they arrived at the border of Velkari space. A massive fleet of ships waited there, crystalline vessels like the one Jake had found, but undamaged and powerful. They had come to escort their queen home. On the Aurora's docking bay, Jake and Zirath stood together one last time. The crew had given them privacy for their goodbye. "I will send messages," Zirath said. "I will find a way to stay in contact." "I'll finish the mission as fast as I can," Jake replied. "And then I'm coming for you. Nothing will stop me." They embraced, her 4 arms wrapping around him, his arms holding her as tightly as he could. Then she pulled away and walked toward the shuttle that would take her to the waiting fleet. At the shuttle door, she turned back. "Remember, Jake Morrison, our paths are connected now. Across any distance, through any time, the bond remains." Then she was gone, and Jake watched her shuttle fly toward the largest of the Velkari ships. He stood there until the fleet activated their faster-than-light drives and vanished, leaving only empty space where they had been. Jake touched his chest, where Zirath had placed a small crystalline pendant before leaving. It pulsed with warm inner light, a piece of her to carry with him. He would finish his mission, and then he would find her again. He promised himself that, standing alone in the docking bay, already missing her more than he thought possible. The Aurora completed its survey mission 3 months ahead of schedule. Jake pushed his crew hard, working double shifts and cutting rest periods to the minimum safe levels. Claire confronted him about it one evening in the mess hall, her expression a mix of concern and frustration. "You're going to burn everyone out, including yourself," she said, sliding into the seat across from him. "What's the rush, Jake? We've already made enough discoveries to keep the scientists back home busy for years." Jake stared at his coffee, knowing she was right but unable to slow down. Every day away from Zirath felt like wasted time. "I just want to get home," he said simply. Claire studied his face for a moment. "This is about her, isn't it? The alien queen." Jake did not deny it. Most of his crew had guessed that something had happened between him and Zirath during those final days before she left. They were too professional to gossip openly, but he caught the knowing looks sometimes. "I made her a promise," Jake said. "I told her I would come find her when the mission was done." "And you will," Claire said gently. "But killing yourself and everyone else with exhaustion won't get you there faster. Trust me, Jake. Pace yourself. We'll get home." Jake took her advice and eased back on the schedule. The Aurora made its way back to Earth at a reasonable speed, arriving 9 months after Zirath had left. Jake had tried to send messages to Velkari space during that time, but they all went unanswered. He told himself it was just communication delays, the vast distances between stars making real-time conversation impossible. Earth welcomed them back as heroes. The data they had collected, the new worlds they had mapped, all of it was groundbreaking. Jake was offered a promotion immediately. Admiral George Hendricks himself met Jake at the landing facility with a handshake and a smile. "Outstanding work, Morrison," Hendricks said. "The kind of mission that makes careers. I'm putting you in charge of deep space coordination. You'll be overseeing all exploration missions from here on out. Office at headquarters, good pay, and you'll never have to spend another night in a cramped ship bunk." It was everything Jake had worked toward for years, a desk job with real influence, the ability to shape humanity's expansion into the stars. But all he could think about was getting back out there to find Zirath. "Thank you, sir," Jake said carefully. "Can I ask for one thing before I accept?" "Name it," Hendricks replied. "I need access to all our diplomatic channels with the Velkari Dominion. I need to establish contact with Queen Zirath." Hendricks's smile faded slightly. "That might be difficult, Morrison. We've had some trouble with Velkari communications lately. They've gone quiet on us, closed their borders about 6 months ago." Jake felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean, close their borders?" "Exactly that. No ships in or out. All diplomatic channels shut down. We've tried reaching out dozens of times, but we get nothing back. Our xenology experts think there might be some kind of internal crisis, but we have no confirmed information." Jake spent his first week back on Earth trying everything he could think of to contact Zirath. He called every diplomat, every scientist who specialized in alien cultures, anyone who might have information about what was happening in Velkari space. The answers were all the same. Nobody knew anything. The Dominion had gone completely silent. Dr. Patricia Wells, a xenologist who had studied the Velkari for 20 years, met with Jake in her cluttered university office. Papers and data tablets covered every surface, and images of various alien species decorated the walls. "The rumors suggest a civil war," Dr. Wells said, pouring tea for both of them. "Multiple factions fighting for control. The Velkari take their internal politics very seriously, and they don't like outsiders seeing them in a weakened state. If there is a war happening, they would absolutely close their borders until it was resolved." "How long could that take?" Jake asked desperately. Dr. Wells shook her head. "No way to know. Could be months. Could be years. The Velkari live a long time, Captain Morrison. Their sense of urgency is very different from ours." Jake threw himself into his new job, partly because it needed to be done, and partly because he needed the distraction. He coordinated missions, reviewed proposals, allocated resources. He was good at it, and the work was important. But every night he went home to his empty apartment overlooking San Francisco Bay and felt the absence of something he had only had for a brief time. He dated occasionally. Well-meaning friends set him up with nice women who worked in the space program or in related fields. Some of them were interesting and attractive, but none of them were Zirath. Jake found himself comparing everyone to her, which was not fair to anyone involved. After a few awkward dinners that went nowhere, he stopped trying. A year passed, then 2, then 3. Jake kept checking for any news from Velkari space, but the silence continued. He sent messages anyway, even though he knew they were probably not getting through. He told Zirath about his work, about Earth, about how much he missed her. He never received a single reply. By the 4th year, people around him started suggesting gently that he should move on. Claire, who had taken command of a new exploration vessel, visited him during her shore leave and found him in his office late at night, staring at star charts of Velkari space. "Jake, you can't keep doing this to yourself," she said. "It's been 4 years. Maybe she's moved on. Maybe she's found someone else. Maybe the situation in her empire is more complicated than we understand." "She wouldn't just forget," Jake said stubbornly. "The bond we formed, it meant something. She told me it was unbreakable." "I believe you," Claire said, "but that doesn't mean circumstances haven't changed. You're putting your life on hold for someone you spent a few weeks with years ago. Is that really what you want?" Jake did not have a good answer for her. He knew objectively that Claire was probably right. 4 years was a long time. Zirath had an entire empire to run, enemies to fight, responsibilities that made his look tiny in comparison. Maybe he had been a brief moment in her life, something nice that happened during a crisis but ultimately not important enough to pursue. But he could not make himself believe it. He still wore the crystalline pendant she had given him. It still pulsed with warm light against his chest. Sometimes, late at night, he would hold it and feel like she was somehow close, like the bond she had spoken of was still real and active. The 5th anniversary of their parting arrived on a cold February morning. Jake woke up early and made coffee, standing at his window and watching the sun rise over the bay. He held the pendant in his hand and made a decision. "I'm giving it 1 more year," he said out loud to the empty apartment. "1 more year of trying to reach you. And if I don't hear anything by then, I'll try to move on. I'll try to build a life here. But I need you to know that I kept my promise. I tried to find you. I never stopped trying." He felt foolish talking to someone who could not hear him, who was thousands of light years away. But it helped somehow, making the decision concrete and real. Jake got dressed and headed to work. It was a normal day, or at least it started that way. He reviewed mission reports, approved supply requests, and attended a boring meeting about budget allocations. He was eating lunch at his desk when his assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, Admiral Hendricks needs to see you right away," she said. "He said it's urgent." Jake put down his sandwich and headed to Hendricks's office. When he arrived, he found the Admiral standing at his window looking up at the sky. The older man's expression was unreadable. "Sir, you wanted to see me?" Jake said. Hendricks turned around. "Morrison, something extraordinary just happened. A Velkari ship appeared in Earth orbit about 20 minutes ago. It's the first contact we've had with them in 5 years." Jake's heart started pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. "Did they say what they want?" "Yes," Hendricks said slowly. "They asked for you, specifically you by name. They said Queen Ziraeth has sent them to retrieve you. They said it's urgent and they need you to come with them immediately." Jake felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. After 5 years of silence, she had finally reached out. "Did they say why? Is she in danger?" "They wouldn't give details, just that the Queen needs you and that time is critical." Hendricks walked over to his desk and leaned against it. "I have to ask, Morrison, what exactly is your relationship with this alien Queen? And should I be concerned about security implications?" Jake took a deep breath. "I saved her life 5 years ago. We formed a connection. She asked me to come to her world after my mission was complete, and I promised I would. I've been trying to contact her ever since I got back, but I couldn't get through." "And now she's calling in that promise," Hendricks said. "Do you want to go?" "Yes," Jake said without hesitation. "More than anything." Hendricks studied him for a long moment. "You understand this could be dangerous? We know almost nothing about the political situation in the Dominion. You could be walking into a war zone." "I understand," Jake said, "but I have to go. I made her a promise." "Then you have my permission," Hendricks said. "But Morrison, be careful, and come back in one piece. We need good people like you." 2 hours later, Jake stood in the shuttle bay, a small bag of personal belongings at his feet. A Velkari shuttle was docked with the orbital station, waiting to take him away. He had said quick goodbyes to the few people who mattered, promising to stay in touch somehow. As he walked toward the shuttle, he touched the pendant under his shirt. After 5 years of waiting, of hoping, of trying not to give up, he was finally going to see her again. The shuttle door opened, and a Velkari warrior stepped out. His armor was scarred and battle-worn, and he carried himself like someone who had seen serious combat. "Captain Morrison," the warrior said through a translator, "I am Commander Thexal of the Sovereign Guard. Queen Ziraeth has sent me to bring you to her. We must leave immediately." "Is she okay?" Jake asked as he stepped into the shuttle. "Is she in danger?" Thexal's expression was hard to read. "The Queen will explain everything when you arrive. It is not my place to speak of such matters." The shuttle door closed, and Jake felt the engines power up. Through the viewport, he watched Earth grow smaller as they headed toward the waiting Velkari ship. After 5 years of separation, he was finally going to get answers. He just hoped he was ready for whatever those answers might be. The Velkari warship was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was 10 times the size of the Aurora, with weapon systems that made human military vessels look like toys. The interior corridors glowed with soft blue light, and the crystalline walls seemed alive somehow, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Velkari crew members moved through the hallways with purpose, barely glancing at the human in their midst. Commander Thexal led Jake to a small cabin near the center of the ship. "You will stay here during the journey," the warrior said. "It will take 3 days to reach the homeworld. The Queen has ordered that you be treated with respect and given anything you need." "Can you at least tell me if she's hurt?" Jake asked. "You said this was urgent." Thexal's antennae twitched in what might have been sympathy. "The Queen is physically well, but the situation is complicated. She will explain when we arrive. Try to rest, Captain Morrison. You will need your strength." The warrior left, and Jake was alone in the cabin. It was surprisingly comfortable, with a bed adapted for human size and a viewport showing the stars streaking past as the ship traveled faster than light. Jake tried to sleep, but could not. His mind was racing with questions and possibilities. Over the next 3 days, Thexal visited occasionally to check on Jake and bring him food. The Velkari had synthesized human-compatible meals, though the taste was strange. On the second day, Jake finally got the commander to talk about what had been happening in the Dominion. "There was a civil war," Thexal confirmed. Several noble houses challenged the queen's right to rule. They said her bloodline was weakened, that she was too young and inexperienced. They wanted to divide the dominion among themselves. But she won, Jake said. It was not a question. If Zirath had lost, she would not be summoning him now. Yes, she won, but it took years and cost many lives. The queen had to prove herself in battle again and again. She crushed 3 separate rebellions and executed the leaders who had betrayed her. Now her position is secure, and no one dares challenge her authority. Jake tried to imagine Zirath as a warrior queen, leading armies and making life and death decisions. It was hard to reconcile with the gentle person he had known, who had touched his face with care and spoken softly about bonds and destiny. "Why didn't she contact me during all of this?" Jake asked. Thexol was quiet for a moment. "The queen had her reasons. It is not my place to explain them. But I can tell you this, Captain Morrison. In all the years I have served her, I have never seen the queen show weakness or doubt. She is strong and decisive. But when she speaks of you, there is something different in her voice, something I cannot name." On the 3rd day, they arrived at the Velkari homeworld. Jake stood at the viewport and stared in wonder at the planet below. It was beautiful beyond description. The surface glittered with cities made of the same crystalline material as their ships, catching the light of twin suns and scattering it in rainbow patterns. Oceans of deep purple stretched between continents, and rings of ice and rock circled the planet like jewelry. The ship descended through the atmosphere and approached the largest city. The royal palace was visible from orbit, a massive structure that seemed to grow organically from the landscape. It had towers that reached into the clouds and bridges of light connecting different sections. They landed in a private docking bay. Thexol led Jake through corridors filled with Velkari nobles and servants, all stopping to stare at the human walking among them. Some looked curious, others hostile. Jake kept his head up and his expression neutral, refusing to show how nervous he felt. Finally, they reached a set of enormous doors guarded by warriors in ceremonial armor. Thexol spoke to them in the Velkari language, and the doors swung open. Beyond was a private chamber with windows overlooking the city, and standing at the far end, backlit by the twin suns, was Zirath. Jake's breath caught in his throat. She looked different than he remembered. Her armor was more elaborate now, covered in gems and precious metals that marked her status as queen. She seemed taller, more imposing, every inch a ruler of a galactic empire. But when she turned to face him, her eyes were the same. Those compound eyes that reflected his image 1,000 times over. "You came," Zirath said, and her voice carried relief and joy and something else Jake could not identify. "You called," Jake replied, walking toward her. "I would have come sooner if I had known how to reach you." Thexol quietly left the room, closing the doors behind him. Jake and Zirath stood facing each other across 10 feet of space that felt like miles. "I closed the borders to protect my people," Zirath said. "The Civil War was brutal and dangerous. I could not risk showing any weakness, and I could not let outsiders see the Dominion in chaos. I wanted to contact you so many times, Jake, but I had to wait until I was certain of my position, until I could offer you what I wanted to offer without putting you in danger." "What happened?" Jake asked. "Thexol told me about the war, but why did it start?" Zirath moved to the windows, looking out over her kingdom. "After you saved me, after we parted, I returned home to find my empire fractured. The attack on my convoy had been just the beginning. Multiple noble houses had formed an alliance against me. They said I was weak, that I had failed to protect myself, that I was not fit to rule." She turned back to face him. "I spent 5 years fighting them, Jake. 5 years of battles and political maneuvering and constant vigilance. I had to be ruthless. I had to make decisions that haunt me even now. But I won. I consolidated my power and eliminated every threat to my throne." "I wish I could have been there to help you," Jake said. "You were," Zirath said softly. "Every day of that war I thought of you. I thought of the human who risked everything to save a stranger, who showed me kindness when he had no reason to, who made me feel something I had never felt before. You were my strength when I wanted to give up." She moved closer to him now, and Jake could see something in her posture he had never seen before. Uncertainty. Nervousness. "There is something I must tell you," Zirath said. "Something I discovered 2 months after you left. Something I have kept secret all these years because I had to protect it above all else." Jake's heart was racing. "What is it?" Zirath walked to a door on the side of the chamber and opened it. Beyond was another room, smaller and filled with soft light. There were toys scattered on the floor and colorful decorations on the walls, and in the center of the room was a small bed. Zirath led Jake inside, and he saw a child sleeping in the bed. His legs almost gave out when he understood what he was seeing. The child was a perfect blend of human and Velkari features. She had Zirath's purple and gold coloring, but her face was structured more like a human's. She had 4 arms like her mother, but human-shaped hands with 5 fingers each. Tiny wing buds were folded against her back. "This is Kira," Zirath said quietly. "Our daughter. She is 4 years old." Jake could not speak. He could barely breathe. He moved closer to the bed and stared at the sleeping child. She had his nose, his chin. Her hair was dark like his, though it had an iridescent sheen that came from Zirath. "How?" Jake finally managed to say. "Hybrid offspring are extraordinarily rare between different species," Zirath explained. "Our medical experts say it happens perhaps once in a million encounters. But somehow, from our one night together, she was created. I did not know I was carrying her until weeks after you left." "Why didn't you tell me?" Jake asked, unable to look away from his daughter. Pain filled Zirath's voice. "I tried, Jake. I sent messages, but the war began before they could reach you, and then it became too dangerous. There were multiple attempts on my life during those years. If my enemies had known about Kira, they would have targeted her. A hybrid child. Proof that I had bonded with an outsider, it would have given them the perfect weapon against me." "So you kept her secret," Jake said. "I kept her hidden with my most trusted guards. Only a handful of people knew she existed. I could not risk her safety, not even to contact you and tell you the truth. Can you forgive me?" Jake turned to look at Zirath and saw tears in her eyes. Real tears, sliding down her face and catching the light. He had never seen her cry before. "There's nothing to forgive," Jake said. "You protected our daughter. You did what you had to do to keep her safe." At the sound of his voice, the child stirred. Her eyes opened, and Jake saw they were human eyes, brown like his own, set in a face that was unmistakably his daughter's. Kira looked up at him with curiosity and no fear. "Mama?" she said in a small voice. "Is this him? Is this my papa?" Zirath nodded. "Yes, little star, this is Jake Morrison, your father, the one I told you about." Kira sat up in bed and extended all 4 of her arms toward Jake. "Papa," she said again, this time with joy. Jake knelt beside the bed and Kira threw her arms around him, hugging him with a strength that surprised him. She was small but solid, warm and real. His daughter. He had a daughter, and she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "I've been waiting for you," Kira said against his shoulder. "Mama showed me pictures and told me stories. She said you were brave and kind, and that you saved her life. She said you would come when it was safe." Jake held his daughter and looked over her head at Zirath. The queen was watching them with an expression of such hope and fear that it broke his heart. "I'm here now," Jake said to both of them. "I'm here and I'm not going anywhere." Kira pulled back and looked at his face with those brown, human eyes. "Promise?" "I promise," Jake said, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. Jake spent the next week living in the palace and getting to know his daughter. Kira was energetic and curious, constantly asking questions and exploring everything around her. She spoke both English and the Velkari language fluently, switching between them without thinking. Her 4 arms made her incredibly coordinated, and she could climb and jump in ways that made Jake's heart stop with worry. "She is very strong for her age," Xerath explained as they watched Kira play in the garden outside the palace. "The Velkari traits give her enhanced strength and speed, but she has human creativity and emotional expression. Our doctors say she is healthy and developing normally for a hybrid child, though we have no comparison since she is the first of her kind." Jake watched Kira chase what looked like a butterfly with crystalline wings. She laughed as she ran, the sound pure and joyful. "She's amazing," he said. "You've done an incredible job raising her." "I had help," Xerath admitted. "My closest advisor, Lady Sarath, has been like a second mother to her, and the guards who protected her during the war, they adore her. But she asked about you constantly, Jake. She wanted to know everything about her human father." Kira ran back to them, breathless and excited. "Papa, can you teach me a human game? Mama taught me Velkari games, but I want to learn your games, too." Jake smiled and knelt down to her level. "How about I teach you how to play catch? It's very simple. I throw a ball, and you catch it. Then you throw it back to me." They spent an hour playing in the garden, and Jake's heart swelled with happiness every time Kira called him Papa. She had been waiting 4 years for him, growing up with stories and pictures but never meeting him in person. Now she clung to him like she was afraid he might disappear again. That evening, after Kira had gone to bed, Jake and Xerath sat together in her private chambers. The room was elegant and comfortable, decorated with things from across the Dominion. Xerath had removed her formal armor and wore simpler clothing that made her look more like the person Jake remembered from 5 years ago. "The High Council wants to meet you," Xerath said. "Tomorrow. They know about Kira now. I could not keep her secret any longer, not if I wanted you to be part of her life." The announcement has created quite a reaction among the nobility. "What kind of reaction?" Jake asked carefully. "Mixed," Xerath replied. "Some are outraged that their queen has a hybrid child with an alien. They see it as a betrayal of Velkari purity. Others are fascinated and see Kira as a symbol of a new era, a bridge between our peoples. And still others are simply waiting to see which way the political winds blow before making their opinions known." Jake thought about the stares he had received walking through the palace, the whispered conversations that stopped when he entered a room. "Are you in danger because of this? Because of me and Kira?" "No," Xerath said firmly. "I won the war, Jake. I proved my strength and my right to rule. Those who might have challenged me are dead or exiled. I am more powerful now than any Velkari queen in 3 generations. They may not like my choices, but they will accept them because they have no other option." She moved closer to him on the couch they shared. "But I need to know what you want, Jake Morrison. I brought you here because I needed you to know about Kira. She deserves to have her father in her life. But I also brought you here because I have not stopped thinking about you for 5 years. The bond between us, it has not faded. If anything, it has grown stronger." Jake took her hand, feeling the cool smoothness of her skin. "I want to be here. I want to be Kira's father. And I want to be with you if you'll have me." "There are complications," Xerath warned. "If you stay, you would be my consort officially. That comes with responsibilities and dangers. You would be a target for anyone who wants to hurt me. And there is the matter of your lifespan. Humans live such short lives compared to my people." "Thexol mentioned something about medical technology," Jake said. Xerath nodded. "We have treatments that can extend your life to match mine. It is a complex process, but it would give you centuries instead of decades. You would age much more slowly, remain healthy and strong for a very long time. But it is permanent, Jake. Once done, it cannot be reversed. You would be giving up your human lifespan." Jake thought about Earth, about the life he had there, his job, his apartment, the few friends he had maintained. It seemed distant and unimportant now compared to what was right in front of him. A daughter who needed him. A woman he loved who had waited 5 years for him to return. "I don't need time to think about it," Jake said. "I want the treatment. I want to stay here with you and Kira. I want to build a life together." Relief flooded Xerath's face. She pulled him close and pressed her forehead to his in that gesture of deep affection. I have hoped for this, but I was afraid to believe it could happen. You are giving up so much. I'm gaining more than I'm losing, Jake said simply. The next day, Jake met with the High Council. It was a formal affair in a vast chamber with representatives from all 40 systems of the Dominion. Jake wore clothing that Ziraeth had provided, a mix of human and Velkari styles that marked him as the Queen's consort. He stood beside Ziraeth's throne as she addressed her people. "This is Jake Morrison," Ziraeth announced, her voice carrying authority that commanded silence. "He saved my life 5 years ago when he had no obligation to do so. He showed me kindness and honor. Together we created a child, Kira, who represents the future of our people. I claim him as my consort under the old laws, and I expect him to be treated with the respect that position demands." There were murmurs of conversation, some angry, some curious. An elderly Velkari noble stood up, his armor marked with symbols of high rank. "Your Majesty, with respect, this human is not one of us. How can he stand beside you as consort? How can a hybrid child be considered part of the royal bloodline?" Ziraeth's voice became cold and hard. "Lord Vextar, did I ask for your approval? I am telling you how things will be. Jake Morrison is my chosen consort. Kira is my daughter and heir. Anyone who has a problem with this is welcome to challenge me directly." The threat was clear. No one spoke up after that. The council meeting continued with discussions of trade and defense, and Jake stood silently beside Ziraeth, learning how to be part of this strange new world. That evening, Admiral Hendricks contacted Jake through long-range communication. The Admiral's face appeared on a holographic display, his expression concerned. "Morrison, what the hell is going on out there? We're getting reports that you've been named consort to an alien queen. Is that true?" "Yes, sir. It is," Jake confirmed. "And I have a daughter. Her name is Kira. She's 4 years old and she's half human, half Velkari." Hendricks stared at him in silence for a long moment. "You have a child with an alien queen and you're planning to stay there permanently. Do I have that right?" "You do, sir. But this doesn't have to be bad for Earth. The Dominion is ready to open diplomatic relations again. I can serve as a bridge between our peoples, help establish trade and cooperation. This could be the beginning of a real alliance." The Admiral rubbed his face tiredly. "You always did think big, Morrison. All right, I'll talk to the diplomatic corps. But you better make this work, and you better stay in touch. We need to know what's happening out there." "I will, sir, I promise." Over the following months, Jake adapted to his new life. He underwent the medical treatments that would extend his lifespan, a process that took weeks and left him feeling strange and different. But when it was done, he could feel the change. His body was stronger, his senses sharper, his mind clearer. The doctors told him he would now live for at least 300 years, probably longer. Earth and the Dominion began formal negotiations. Jake served as the primary liaison, helping both sides understand each other and find common ground. It was challenging work, but rewarding. Trade agreements were signed, scientific exchanges were established. Slowly, the two civilizations began to build trust. Jake married Ziraeth in a ceremony that combined human and Velkari traditions. Representatives from 40 planets attended, along with a delegation from Earth. Claire came as Jake's witness, and she hugged him tightly before the ceremony. "You really did it," she said with a smile. "You found your alien queen and got your happy ending. I'm proud of you, Jake." The ceremony was beautiful and strange. Jake and Ziraeth exchanged vows in both languages, promising to stand together through whatever came. Kira was there, dressed in a tiny version of royal armor, beaming with joy as she watched her parents marry. The years that followed were good ones. Kira grew into a confident and intelligent child, loved by both her parents. She became a symbol of cooperation between species, proof that different peoples could create something beautiful together. Jake found purpose in his work as ambassador, building bridges between worlds and helping to shape a future where humans and Velkari worked side by side. 5 years after Ziraeth had found him again, Jake stood on a balcony overlooking the crystalline city. Kira was playing nearby, her wings now strong enough for short flights. She soared through the air, laughing, while Ziraath watched with a proud smile. "Do you ever regret it?" Ziraath asked, coming to stand beside Jake. "Leaving Earth behind? Giving up your old life?" Jake thought about the question seriously. He thought about everything he had left behind, everything he had given up. Then he looked at his wife and daughter, at the incredible world that had become his home, at the important work he was doing. "Not even for a second," he said honestly. "You gave me something I never knew I needed. A family that spans the stars. A love that defied every expectation. A daughter who is the best of both our peoples. A purpose that matters." Ziraath leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "The old laws say a life debt creates a bond. But this is so much more than that. This is choice, Jake. Every day I choose you." "And I choose you," Jake replied, wrapping his arm around her. Below them, the twin suns began to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Human ships arrived at the orbital platforms, bringing diplomats and traders and scientists. The future was unfolding, bright with possibility. Jake Morrison had saved an alien queen's life, shared one night with her, and vanished back into his own world. But destiny and love had brought them back together, creating something neither of their peoples had thought possible. A family built on love rather than obligation. A bridge between civilizations. A new chapter in the history of two worlds. And it all began with one simple act of compassion. One human who saw someone in need and chose to help, no matter how different they were. That single choice had changed everything, not just for Jake and Ziraath, but for entire civilizations reaching toward a shared future among the stars.